Now we invite speaker number one, testimony one. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. I am in the army in Eritrea from 1997. I spent about 23 of my years in the army. In 2013, I am stationed at the border with Ethiopia with the army. I was accused of participating in a coup, but I didn't know anything of this. It was my army leader that planned this, but I refused to participate. When the coup failed, they brought me to prison. I spent many years in that prison, and when they released me, I was sent to the border of Ethiopia to an area called Shiraro in Ethiopia, Tigray. It is not far from the Eritrean border. There is a war in that area. We stopped in Shiraro, but the other armies continued to move to other places. The big battles and fighting are in other areas, but also I participated in some fighting. We were fighting the Tigrayans. It's the army of Debretsion. I was there for 3 months. We lived in the houses of the normal people of Tigray who escaped. After 3 months, I was injured, so they sent me to a hospital. It was crowded in the hospital because there was a big number of injured from Eritrea and Ethiopia, so they sent me to another hospital. From there, I escaped. There were people who rejected to fight. They said, why should we die in another country? Now, all of them are in prison. Most of them are in Mai Serva. They are in a very bad condition, like in any prison. No one knows exactly how they can live. They don't allow their families to visit them. 3 of them were my colleagues that I know personally. Even some leaders rejected to fight, so President Isaiah sent them to prison first, then put them on house arrest in a closed area. Inside the towns in Tigray, there was the Ethiopian army. The Eritrean army was all around the towns. We wore the same uniform as the Ethiopians. Everything for us, it was like the Ethiopian army, and the Eritrean army was until Mekelle, from the Eritrean border until Mekelle. We have all the army equipment, all the army cars, and even the heavy equipment for bombing, 120 and 130. I reached the Ethiopian border on the 2nd of November 2020. It was a large army. Before that, I was in the prison. And directly from the prison to Ethiopia, I came with 160 other prisoners. Some of us spent 8, 9, or 10 years in prison, but all of us were sent to Ethiopia. Some people spent 13 years in that prison. They arrested them when they tried to escape to Ethiopia. They sent the ones from prison that were in there for more than 8 years or so. The others stayed there. No one gave us any information. We were on the cars and we didn't know where we were going. When I came out of the prison, the Eritrean army didn't give us time to think of anything. When we arrived in the border, the army split us prisoners into many different parts. We didn't understand anything until we reached the area of Badme. At that area, we just know what will happen. It took 6 hours to get from Badme to Shirado on foot. I don't remember the moment exactly, but I know 2 November we were in Shiraro. When I was in prison, there were 640 prisoners. There was no space to sleep, but they allowed us to bring a TV. We bought it from all the group. So I know the time well, because I saw Al Jazeera, BBC, so I know the date well from that reason. They released us on the 30th of October from prison, and at the 2nd of November I was in Shirado. The first point they took us to was called Sambal. All the area is a mountain area. It is called Sambal, very close to Badme. Then we go directly to Shiraro. It's not a big battle. We directly go inside Shiraro. But when we are inside Shiraro, there's fighting, much fighting, for 3 days. We don't know anything until we reach Sambal. At that moment, we see a big number of army. We hear bombing, so we know who we are in an area of war. I am thinking, those people, the government, they hate us. Most of us were people who came from the prison. Some of us tried to escape from Eritrea, so the government hates us and wants to kill us in the war. They sent us to the war to kill us. It is a punishment. I think most of the army came to this area under pressure. All of us wanted to leave Eritrea or hate the regime. There is a number. Some of us tried to flee to go to Sudan. If they found any of the ones trying to flee, they will send them directly to the prison, and no one knows after that what happens. The Eritrean government closed all the telephone and contact from the area of Tigray. They also took all the telephones of the army, except for the commanders, so there's no contact with anyone. Thank you.
Hi, so this is a presentation on the chronology of the Ethiopia and Eritrea peace process. So there were many events that already happened from 2018 when Abiy became the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. But in June 2018, a speech by President Isaias was a continuation of an Eritrean antagonistic policy towards the TPLF. Next slide, please. So in his speech, Isaias used expressions as hate speech, such as game over and the end of the PTLF shenanigans. But he also used, but although it will require time and effort to remove the TPLF's toxic and malignant legacy and to bring about a congenial climate, the positive direction that has been set in motion is crystal clear. So from June to November 2018, there were many positive events that happened. And these were marked, this was a period marked by the opening of the borders, the resumption of flights, the telecommunication, and the exchange of ambassadors. But from December 2018, Eritrea closed borders with Tigray without notice. And by May 2019, Eritrea unilaterally closed all borders with Tigray. So from 2018 onwards, there were many appointments made with ambassadors, but these did not materialize between the countries. And so the bottom line of this was actually that the relationship between Eritrea and Ethiopia is highly personalized between the President Isaias and the Prime Minister Abiy. So from February 2019 to March 2021, at least 7 high-level diplomatic exchange visits between Eritrea and Ethiopia happened, but no progress in the Eritrea and Ethiopia peace process was made. There were mutual visits to military bases, such as the Sawa military camp by Prime Minister Abiy, and the Ethio engineering producers of vehicles for the Defense Force and the Ethiopian Air Force by the President Isaias. The TPLF has been increasingly sidelined and referred to as junta, and so also Ethiopia used COVID to postpone the elections, but the TPLF thought it was unconstitutional, so they held it anyways. So from 2020 to 2021, the name calling of the TPLF went from being called junta to actually being declared as a terrorist organization. So you can see the hate here as well against the TPLF. Yes. And so the conclusion of this is basically that President Isaias and the Prime Minister Abiy have been working together while delegitimizing the TPLF and creating hate towards the Tigray people. And as is clear by this press release, the Tigray leadership is fighting to preserve the security of their people and their right to self-determination under the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
A report on the assassination attempt of Tigray Regional President Debretsion. In February 2020, I received information that the Tigray regional forces had prevented an attempt to assassinate the president of the regional government of Tigray. I heard that farmers had seen that the Eritrean military had illegally entered Tigray and that the farmers had subsequently warned the Tigray regional defense forces. The Tigray regional forces were then able to arrest the invading military. I understood that Eritrean military had exercised a mission to kill the leader of the regional government of Tigray, President Debretsion. I understood that this made the regional government of Tigray apparently aware of the intentions of the Eritrean government to undermine the Tigray regional government and attack its leadership. At the time, This was a surprising story to hear, as Eritrea had entered into a peace agreement with Ethiopia. The story did not convey intentions of the Eritrean government to Tigray being peaceful. I understood that this situation put the Tigray regional government on alert to be prepared for hostile activities perpetrated from Eritrea on Tigray. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to remind our audience that we are reflecting on the involvement of Eritreans in the war in Tigray. Voices from Tigray. We will now welcome testimony number 4. Welcome.
I learned during a meeting in early 2020 that Tigray was concerned that it was actively undermined by the central government in Addis Ababa, which was allegedly blocking the visit of foreign delegations. The visit that was blocked was a delegation from China. I understood that the foreign delegation had not received the necessary permissions from Addis Ababa, and that, as a result, the visit could not take place. This seemed to be a move that could be construed as a hostile act by the central government on the regional government in Tigray. There was no explanation as to the reasons for the obstruction to the visit. I could not understand what the reason was for refusing the delegation entry. I had no means to clarify this issue further, but it raised concern about the quality of the relations between the central government in Addis Ababa and regional government of Tigray, which appeared to be tense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Testimony number 5.
Last night on the 3rd of November, 2 planes landed in Mekelle to bring back notes. However, with the planes came with many commando troops of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. It was reported that they came to arrest the regional government of Tigray, which was meeting. A shout-out started and we heard shooting from the city. They did not succeed in arresting the regional government. The regional government of Tigray has now ordered the Tigray troops to defend the region, and the Tigray forces have attacked the ENDF positions in the northern command in Tigray. We hear that many have joined the Tigray Defense Forces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Testimony number 6.
A witness has reported that on the 4th of November 2020, Eritrean soldiers have already entered into the town of Eritrea near the Ethiopia-Eritrea border, where the troops started killing civilians. The attack by Eritrean troops in Eritrea happened in the night of the 3rd and the 4th of November. The attack did not follow the law and order operation declared by the Ethiopian government on the 4th of November. The attack in Tigray happened prior to the declaration of the law and order operation. The question is, why did Eritrean troops enter Tigray? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are following testimonies on the involvement of Eritreans in the war in Tigray, crimes under international law committed by Eritreans in Tigray, deliberate planning and war preparations, deception, fabrication, and disinformation. We now welcome testimony number 8.
On the 3rd of November, there were 2 cargo flights said to be transporting money from Addis Ababa to Mekelle. The first flight was a cargo flight B789, number ETAUR, and it had flight number ET3102. This flight departed from Addis at 17:31 and arrived in Mekelle at 18:34, and it was waiting until 4:20 and departed for Addis at 4:21. The second flight departed from Addis at 21:05 and arrived at Mekelle at 22:25, then waited until 4:06 and departed for Addis at 4:07. This was also a cargo flight, A350, number ETATY, with flight number ET3100. The planes were sent with what could be construed as a pretext for delivering new money notes to Mekelle. That was normally done with a cargo flight. Therefore, the airport authorities allowed it to land. That is why it was a pretext. Cargo flights are not used regularly, but they are only used in special circumstances. It is understood that the planes were carrying commandos and that these were sent with an intention to arrest and kill the Tigray government leadership. When the airport workers wanted to unload the money, the commandos started shooting and everyone started running. The shooting by the commandos, which has been sent to Mekelle from Addis Ababa, happened on the 3rd of November. Military planes and Tanovs from Addis Ababa arrived later on the evening of the 3rd in Mekelle, sending reinforcements. Only after these events, the following day, on the 4th of November, the Ethiopian government declared a law and order operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We welcome testimony number 8.
You want to understand the processing of international cargo in Ethiopia? All international cargo needs to come through Addis Ababa for a customs check. That is what the airport rules and regulations say. These do not permit the transport of international cargo flights directly to other places in Ethiopia, to other places than Addis Ababa. However, cargo flights were going on international flights from Asmara to places in Ethiopia other than Addis Ababa. For instance, they would go directly from Asmara to Gondar, which is normally illegal or not possible. How it was possible? Well, there was a team established under the Ethiopian Prime Minister in the PM's office. This was a team that was operating with higher military officials from Eritrea and Ethiopia. So, cargo flights were allowed to go directly between Addis Ababa, Asmara, Bahadir and Gondar, even if it is against the rules. The cargo could be sent, for instance, to bring food and to transport weapons and mechanized weapons between Ethiopia and Eritrea. In my estimation, there could be as close as 10 cargo flights sent across Ethiopia and Eritrea. The weapons would then be transported into domestic smaller planes to places like Samara. Samara is the capital of the Afar region, which borders with Tigray, and it's a very strategic place. My understanding is that they were transporting weapons and soldiers on domestic Ethiopian airline flights to the town of Samara for military deployment. These were not military airplanes. These were flights from Ethiopian Airways. That is what I understood the situation to be.
Thank you. Thank you for that testimony. That cargo flights could be used to transfer weapons. And sometimes civilian aeroplanes could be used to transfer weapons. Thank you very much. Next testimony.
This is a report, the findings of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, ACHPR. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the ACHPR, says that on the 4th of November 2020, the government of Ethiopia launched a military offensive against the TPLF, which was followed by attacks on the northern command of the ENDF by the TPLF on the same day. The finding of the commission contradicts the federal government claim that law enforcement operation in Tigray was taken due to TPLF's attack on the northern command. The commission also said, in accordance with its mandate of promotion and protection of human rights in Africa under Article 45 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, a commission of inquiry on Tigray was formed and will officially commence its work on the 17th of June 2021. According to the ACHPR, the commission of inquiry will begin its work from its headquarters in Banjul, Republic of the Gambia. The commission of inquiry has a mandate to, inter alia, investigate allegations of violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law, and to gather all relevant information so as to determine whether the allegations constitute serious and massive violations of human rights, said the ACHPR. On the 27th of June, the report by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights was no longer available or reachable online. There are screenshots regarding the report that is no longer online available, that you can read later on when we send the documents. And the Commission has since retracted the conclusion, referring to factual errors with an unreserved apology. This is a presentation about how Eritrea was involved in the war in Tigray. Next slide, please. And it shows how Eritrea was involved in, had military preparations before the war started in November 2020. So there were military preparations from Eritrea from March till July 2020. From March 2020 till July 2020, the Eritrean leadership traveled to Ethiopia to visit key military installations. During the same period, the Eritrean government received delegations from Ethiopia, Sudan, and Somalia. In July 2020, Prime Minister Abiy and President Isaias with their families visited Sawa Military Training School. Prime Minister Abiy is the only head of state to visit Sawa, the training camp for national service, characterized as a crime against humanity by the UN Commission of Inquiry on Eritrea. Important to know is that Prime Minister Abiy reviewed the preparation for the graduation of the 33rd round of Sawa, and this 33rd round of Sawa is now deployed in Tigray and was notably deployed in the Eritrean refugee camp Shemalba, from where refugees were abducted to Eritrea and forcibly deployed in the Eritrean Defense Forces to fight against Tigray. So this shows how Eritrea has been preparing for the invasion or for the war with Tigray before the war started in November 2020. Next slide, please. An instrument that was used by Eritrea was Corona, and the COVID restrictions in Eritrea were used to restrict all civil movements except for military movements. So we can see that there has been suspension of all commercial flights to and from Eritrea, closure of all institutions of learning except for the Sawa military training camp, banning of the circulation of public and private transport, severe restrictions of civil movement between towns and cities, and the only mobility that has been allowed is a military mobility. And this picture shows the bus and the people, and it shows the departure of new conscripts from Asmara to Sawa in September 2020, which was the 34th round, during which no social distancing was observed. And in this graphic, it shows how the amount of cases, of COVID confirmed cases, is linked with so as I said previously, there was a total lockdown by the Eritrean government on all civil movements during the entire period, except with the military operations. So what we see is that the military operations coincide with a large increase in number of COVID infections in Eritrea. So Corona was used as a way to ensure a total lockdown, but it was not because they really cared about the amount of cases, because the amount of cases did go up every time, like you can see with the war and on the graphic. And so it was an instrument in the war, or is an instrument in the war. Another instrument that is used is the war on misinformation, or we also know a lot about fake news. And an article investigating disinformation was published by the Atlantic Councils by the spin doctors of the Eritrean regime. But at the same time, this Atlantic Council has been an outlet that Eritrea has used for many years to spread misinformation themselves on the situation in Eritrea, and which is linked to interest of the mining industry such as Nepsum. So we've seen that the involvement of Eritrea in the war was not spontaneous, but was planned before the war started in November 2020. It was planned almost a year before, and that they used Corona and misinformation to mask their involvement in the war in Tigray. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, this is the testimony with a 25-year-old former conscript in the Eritrean National Service. So I worked with the army in Eritrea under the national service. I was in the army for 6 years. I was 19 years when I entered the army. When Corona came, they closed all the roads in Eritrea. There are no jobs, and as a soldier, we are suffering because we are depending on another job. Normally, also, I work on my bicycle. I have many goods. I sell it to people outside of Testimony. It's about 20 kilometers. When Corona came, they are banning me to continue on this work, and they want me to work with them all the time to protect people from Corona. We work on closing all the roads everywhere. Then one of our leaders heard I'm working in selling goods and traveling, and he saw my bicycle and said, maybe you have the Corona and you will send it to other people or something like that. So you can give us your bicycle. My bicycle is with them about 1 month. And after that, all my colleagues, the soldiers, are in a very bad situation because there is nothing left. No food, no anything. Then after that, when they saw the situation, they allow us to continue our work. They give me my bicycle and I continue my work and also my colleagues. But still they continue. If they found me with my bicycle and I have some goods, they don't allow me and they stole it also. But still I continue because we need that. Although, for example, if they stole your goods one day, you lost the work for all the week. But still I continue because I need to live. 4 months ago, in February 2021, they want to send us to the area of Hajer. They want to send us to training. They told us you will be sent to that area just for 2 weeks, just for training. But we do not trust that because we know it is not the area of the training. The area of the training is in the west or another area. I know they will send me to Tigray area for fighting, and I know it is a very dangerous area. Some people have died, some are arrested. I'm thinking, if I die at that place, the government will not continue to see how my family will live, and they will not give them anything. They will not care for my family. So I decided to leave Eritrea and told my family about that. I know that my colleagues who I trained with, most of them, they were sent to Humera after for fighting. Fortunately, at that time, it is better, no fighting. They spent 2 months in Humera. Then they come back to my area after they spent 2 months. This was February until April 2021. We still have some contacts in the army. Sometimes they call me. When I hear my colleagues are going to Tigray, and before them, there was a big group going to Tigray also. They are living in the house of Tigray people. When the Tigray people leave, they are living in their house. There is a big number of the Eritrean army in Tigray. The first group from the army from our area left in November or December in 2020. It is a big number. There's about 140 people from the people I know, and also from many other areas. Especially the first army they sent was a big number of soldiers. There are 2 groups that went from my area. From one group, all of them come back, but from the other, they are still in Tigray. Many people, even from my own division. I know because I am in contact with some of my friends. But the law of the army is that you must keep silent all information, especially like this. So until now, the families do not know what happened. Even one of my leaders died. When the war started, our leaders said to us, be ready at all times. We did many movements. We were ready the whole time. We walked a lot on foot, but it is impossible to view any information about the area of war. There are lies many times. For example, when they said to us, we will send you to Hajer, but they want to send us to Tigray, to the area of war, so no one will tell you the reality. They didn't tell us anything. From the first, they were not saying we're going to Tigray. All of the soldiers, they just told us we were going to the border of Ethiopia, also the first group. The Eritrean Soldiers army, they are wearing clothes like the Ethiopian army. They said that they didn't have any Eritrean soldiers in Ethiopia. One thing that helped was the clothes, and it is difficult to distinguish, to know the difference between Eritreans and the Ethiopians. The strategy of the Eritrean army is to just be in the area inside of Tigray, and they are successful in this. The Eritrean army kidnapped many Eritreans from Tigray and brought them back to Eritrea. Some people came back to Eritrea and left again to Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The testimony from a young man who is forced to fight a war he did not choose to fight in. Thank you very much. The next testimony.
Excerpt of testimony on the involvement of Eritrea in the war in Tigray. Audio interview available. What is the relationship the Eritrean army has with the Ethiopian army? It is a very good relation. You also spend time together eating? Yes, we are dealing with them normally. We eat with them. I think all the things came from Ethiopia. The food, for example, and the houses. All the things are owned by the Ethiopians. And also I know that if the Eritrean army caught any group of Tigray or of civilian people, we would send them all to the Ethiopians, especially the opposition. The Eritrean sent them to the Ethiopian government. So the Ethiopian opposition, that would be the Tigray people. Yes, Tigray. If people got wounded, also Eritrean and Ethiopian soldiers would be sent to Eritrea. Yes, they send them to the Eritrean hospital called Glass. There are helicopters. Glass Hospital, the area is closed. No one goes inside Glass. Even if you're a brother and you have your son, you will not see him. For example, one woman knows her son is injured in this hospital. If she came to this when she came to this hospital to visit him, the army said, "Who told you? Who gave you this information?" In the end, she told them about the one, and they bring the one, and then they send the one to prison. Also, they send her to prison. For this story, 3 people went to prison because someone gave information. If people die, if Eritreans die in Tigray, what happens to their bodies? They put the people who die in cars. The cars are traveling. We don't know what happens after that, whether they send them to Eritrea or Ethiopia after that. No one asks. We are an army. About the injured people, the Eritrean injured people, the people who are far from Eritrea, they send them to Addis. But the injured here, on the border of Eritrea, they sent them to Eritrea, to Glass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If Eritreans die in Tigray, what happens to them? No one should ask. Very moving testimony on Eritrean soldiers. When they die, what happens to them? Thank you. The next testimony, please.
I left Eritrea in January 2015. I hate the Eritrean government. I came from prison, I escaped from the army, and then they catch me. I spent 1 year and 2 months in prison. I fled to Hitsat in Ethiopia. When the war started, all the area is unsafe, so we decided to leave the camp. There was a lot of fighting in Hitsat. You couldn't even find a way to go through it. It started around November 2020. It was the army of Eritrea against Tigray. Leader Debretsion. When the Eritreans came, I had already left the camp. We heard about many people that died. I left my family in Hitsat, and since then I have no news from them. They didn't come with me because it is very difficult for a woman and children to come to make the long journey. I wanted to go to Sudan and started my journey to the border. But in one area, the Eritrean army caught me and sent me again to Eritrea, to Baden 2. I don't remember well when this was. We were in campaign of about 15 big army cars. A lot of people fit in there. When we came to Eritrea, they divided us in 2 groups. The groups that came from Hitsat camp, they kept them in the prison for 2 weeks. Then they released them and allowed them to go to their families for a holiday. In another interview, it was said that they were enlisted in the army after that. But the other group, they sent them to prison. I spent 4 months in Baden 2 prison. The group that spent long in prison were the ones that escaped from the army. When they allowed me to go to the toilet, I escaped. From Baden 2, I spent about a month working. Then after that, the government was looking for people to take to the national service. So I escaped to Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The next testimony.
A donkey is screaming in front of the window. In front, children stand in line. They are thin. All residents of the camp complain of hunger in Shah. You eat the breadcrumbs given to them. You preserve them in small plastic bags. Sometimes they are moldy. They complain of indiscriminate arrests of young men. They often sleep on the raw concrete floor or outside in the dust. They took us to a police station, says Rosina, tortured us with electric shocks, hit us with cable. The men forced them, undressing naked. They stuck their hands in my vagina, allegedly to look for papers. Then they brought us along with other prisoners on a truck heading east. They wanted to execute us, says Rosina. Luckily, when she came across employees of the Ethiopian Red Cross, the military left them behind. She says she ran until she reached a small village. There are the Eritreans found her. They saw me and raped me. After that, the women of the village hid her in a house. You heard the Eritreans coming back. They asked, "Where is that girl?" Then they took the ship of the villagers and shortly afterwards looted the whole village. They took everything, animals, grain, furniture. When Rosina left her hiding place after 2 weeks, she was raped again by the soldiers. They said we should turn Tigray into a desert and rape so many of you guys as we can. Before the war, Rosina operated a small restaurant. She wanted to go to vocational school and study accounting to enable her daughter to have a better life. That was her dream. Now she says, "I don't know what the future will bring. I have seen too many dead and seen too much destruction. The Eritreans and Amhara are stealing everything. In the future, I only see hunger and death." Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that testimony.
This is testimony number 15, and it's a testimony by a nurse in Mekelle. Mulu Mesfin is a nurse and has been looking after patients since the beginning of the war in Mekelle. Mulu says, "The number of victims is growing. You hardly sleep anymore. You eat rarely. The suffering of the women of Tigray, it eats you away. I do no longer care about my children. I care no longer about myself. Everyone here is losing weight. But we have to help," she says, and she cries. Mulu says 10 to 15 women come every day to the center where she works. They are getting more and more women, she says. Mulu knows hundreds of stories like the one of Rosina. More than 500 are registered in their center. So far there have been 1,500 in all centers together, but the real number, so Mulu estimates, is definitely 20 times higher. Often women come to us who are talking about 20 or 30 cases in their villages. Women who never make it to us, says Mulu. The women that are raped are between 4 and 80 years old. Around half is underage. Lots come with broken bones, some with organ failure. Many were infected with HIV, so says Mulu. They keep hearing stories here about soldiers telling their victims they have been selected and sent to Tigray because they are infected with HIV. That is difficult to verify. Mulu says all victims of mass rape, those who arrive here, are HIV positive. Most rapes, she says, are mass rapes. There are stories of 30 soldiers attacking the women. There are cases when the perpetrators are so numerous that women can no longer count them. Once there was a group of 15 girls loaded into a minibus and into a military camp. There they were raped, Mulu says with a lower voice, for over a week. The killers, according to Mulu, paid attention to hold the victim long enough to make sure they were infected with HIV or AIDS. This is how it happened to one of the nuns in a nearby convent. For 10 days, so says Mulu, the sisters were raped by soldiers. Now the sister is also HIV positive. Often they force the families to watch, says Mulu. Mothers, fathers, brothers, particularly if they break up the families. The physical injuries of women that she treats, says Mulu, are shocking. The perpetrators regularly hurt the women by putting rubbish or dirty clothes and sometimes also acid in their vaginas. Almost half of the women who come to the clinic, says Sister Mulu, are pregnant. The beds in the hospital are full of women having an abortion. Pregnant women are also raped. Then the soldiers beat them with rifles on their stomach so they bleed and lose a child. Sister Mulu says, we need peace. We need the world to help us.
Report 16 on disinformation. A 70-page report accuses Western media of being complicit in spreading disinformation about the crisis in Tigray, Ethiopia, and Eritrea's involvement in opening conflict. Reportedly, Eritrean and Ethiopian ministers and diplomats have helped spread and publicize the report, which accuses Western media and governments of scapegoating Eritrea for the conflict in Tigray. The report, entitled Disinformation in Tigray, Manufacturing Consent for Secessionist War, was written by an organization, New Africa Institute, that does not have a registered NPO address and only have one employee. This employee is reportedly a vocal Eritrean government supporter. The report uses fact-checking tropes and other forms of manipulation to dismiss evidence of atrocities committed in Tigray as disinformation. Among the facts that are being denied is the large-scale sexual violence being committed by the Eritrean soldiers in Tigray, including gun rape, claiming such rape does not happen in Eritrea. The author of the report said that officials in various countries are reviewing what was said in that report, and it is potentially being used in diplomatic circles. The Atlantic Council, publishing on the report, is a well-known spin doctor for the Eritrean regime and was previously linked to interests of the mining industry. Thank you.
This is a testimony from a young woman in her early 20s from Eritrea who fled to Sudan. I am from Eritrea. I was 18 years old when I went to the army. I worked to sell coffee. From my coffee shop, the army came to collect me. Someone targeted me because they came just for me. I had some customers. Those soldiers came and they told me, come with us. I said, why? They haven't got any answer, but they just said, come with us. We are the government. So I go with them, and I saw other people just like me from other areas. They sent me to an area called Hander Tisane. I spent about 3 weeks there. Then they sent me to the place of the training. It's called Komana. It looks like all Eritrea is at that place. People come from all over Eritrea. Also a big number of women and girls. I spent 1 year in Komana. We did army trainings, weapons, everything. We spent all the time crying. They punished us the whole time. We had to crawl on our knees on the ground. They beat us. There were many kinds of punishment. They will kill you if you try to escape. They will gun you directly. There was no difference between women and men. We did the same things. We worked like the men. There are people from all ages, from around 16 years old. There's a lot of sexual harassment. They rape girls. They have their houses near us. They send people to the group and they say to a girl, come. The leader wants you in his place. All we ever think about is to escape this area. Many girls try to escape. For girls who want to go to Keren or Asmara, maybe they are successful, But for us, from the lowlands, it is difficult because they closed the borders. If they catch you, they beat you, ban you from food, although there is no food at all, just 2 breads, but they take even that. Many women get pregnant. They bring them to the hospital first and then back to the camp. They don't have to do any training, but they say, you can have your child here. I am suffering there. I am sick, but they force me to go to the training with the others. After the training, I was deployed to an area near Keren. I worked there as a soldier to catch people or when someone makes a mistake. It's not my choice. I did it under pressure. The harassment is very bad. There is just a few girls with a large number of men. We sleep in one place. In one point, I was the only girl. Harassment from the men is expected, and we are constantly suffering from this. I tried to ask for another girl to join me, and I asked many times for a holiday. Many times they rejected this. The peace agreement changed nothing. One day, the leader saw me crying and asked, why is this girl crying? They told me perhaps she's tired. Still, I spent 1 month there. After that, they gave me 1 month holiday to go to my family. After the month, I escaped to Sudan. Now I'm working to earn some money to try and go to Libya, because I haven't got my family to help me. I hear about many people, youth, that go to Libya. I want to change my life, so I will do this difficult thing. Still here, I feel danger from the Eritrean government. I feel there's people collaborating with the Eritrean government here. I worked with the government as a soldier, and I know, if I look into your eyes, I know if you work with the government or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that testimony. So we have been following testimonies on the involvement of Eritrean soldiers in war in Tigray. The testimonies have raised a lot of concerns. There have been issues about a premeditated attack and hate campaign against Tigrayan people and its elected leadership with an intention to provoke war in Tigray and through a deliberate campaign of disinformation. There have been testimonies on crimes against humanity, deployment of indefinite national service characterized as an enslavement and forced labor and crime against humanity, deployment of prisoners, abducted refugees and children. There have been testimonies on war crimes, killings and targeting of civilians in massacres and attacks on the civilian population, conflict-related sexual violence against women, attacks on religious sites and historical monuments. Crimes against international humanitarian law, where the attack on refugees and the international protection, abduction and killing of refugees, killing of aid workers. There have also been testimonies that touch on genocide campaign intended to destroy the livelihoods of the people of Tigray by creating famine, killing animals, destroying resources. So these testimonies have helped us to reflect on the suffering of the people of Tigray brought about by the involvement of Eritrea in the war.